What happens when a beloved pop icon steps onto a daytime talk show stage, only for the conversation to spiral into an unthinkable showdown that leaves the audience stunned and the host scrambling to recover? That is exactly what unfolded when Jennifer Lopez appeared on The View for what was supposed to be a lighthearted interview, but ended in chaos. Before we get into the details of this heated encounter that no one saw coming, make sure to hit that subscribe button and tell me in the comments whose side you would have been on if you were in that studio. It began innocently enough. Jennifer Lopez, radiant as ever, walked onto the stage of The View to thunderous applause. She waved to the audience, offered quick hugs to the panelists, and settled into the guest chair, crossing her legs gracefully. Beside her, the panel of hosts, Whoopi Goldberg, Joy Behar, Sunny Hostin, Sarah Haynes, and Alyssa Farah Griffin, prepared to kick off what was meant to be a breezy conversation about Jennifer's latest film and her recent philanthropic work. Joy leaned in first, her trademark grin lighting up her face. "Jennifer, it is so good to have you here. You look amazing as always. Tell us about this new project. What drew you to it?" Jennifer smiled warmly. "Thank you, Joy. No, this film felt really special because it focuses on family, resilience, and finding joy after hardship. It's the kind of story that I think connects with people right now." The audience clapped again, but as the applause died down, Whoopi leaned forward, resting her elbows on the table. There was something in her expression, a flicker of irritation, perhaps, that shifted the energy in the room. "Jennifer," Whoopi began, her voice steady but cool, "you talk a lot about resilience. But how do you reconcile that with the way you seem to jump from relationship to relationship? I mean, some people might say that does not exactly scream stability." The studio seemed to hold its breath. Jennifer's eyes narrowed slightly. She paused, clearly surprised by the pointedness of the question. "Well, Whoopi," she replied, voice calm but firm, "I do not think resilience means you never fall or change. It means you get back up, you learn, you grow. And I do not think my personal life disqualifies me from talking about those things. I have lived it." Whoopi arched an eyebrow, not backing down. "Sure, but do you think people might see a contradiction there? I mean, you are telling folks to value stability and family, but your track record suggests otherwise. Do you worry about the message that sends?" Joy shot Whoopi a sharp glance, trying to defuse the tension. "Come on, Whoopi. We are all human. Nobody is perfect. Jennifer's done a lot of good. Let's not reduce her to the tabloids." Sunny chimed in, her tone measured. "I think it is fair to ask about authenticity, but I also think Jennifer has been open about her journey. That is part of what people connect with." Jennifer took a breath, keeping her composure. "Look, I am here to talk about the work, the causes I care about, and the positive things we can do together. I am not here to rehash my personal life in the way the media likes to do. I thought this was going to be a conversation about that." Whoopi leaned back, crossing her arms. "Well, maybe people want honesty more than they want polished answers. Maybe they're tired of celebrities selling an image instead of the truth." Jennifer blinked, then let out a short laugh, but it lacked humor. "Wow, is that what you think I'm doing here? Selling an image?" The audience was utterly silent. Even Sarah, who usually chimed in with something lighthearted, seemed unsure how to jump in. Whoopi did not hesitate. "I think people are smart enough to know when they're being fed a story that leaves out the messy parts. And I think it's fair to say, if you are going to come on this show and talk about values, let's talk about all of them." Jennifer's voice was low, but steady. "I have never claimed to be perfect, Whoopi. I speak from my experiences. The good and the bad. That is real. And frankly, I did not come here expecting to be ambushed." Joy tried again to change the subject. "Let's talk about the charity work you are doing. That's something we all admire." But Whoopi shook her head, waving off the pivot. No, let's stay with this. Because I think people are tired of the gloss. I think people want to hear you say, yeah, I have messed up, and here is how I really feel about it. Not just what looks good in a press release." Jennifer sat back, folding her arms now, mirroring Whoopi's stance. "Are you saying I have not owned my mistakes? Are you saying I am fake?" There was an edge to her voice now, a warning. But Whoopi pressed on, undeterred. "I'm saying, it feels like you came here wanting to promote something without being willing to have a real conversation." Sunny shifted uncomfortably. "Whoopi, maybe we can approach this differently." But Whoopi interrupted. "No, Sunny, Because we always let people come on here and spin whatever narrative they want. And I'm tired of it. I think the viewers are tired of it too. Jennifer's jaw tightened. She took a moment, choosing her words carefully. I have done this a long time, Whoopi. I have been honest about my life, my struggles, my choices. I do not owe anyone my pain packaged up for entertainment. I share what I choose to share when I choose to share it. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. The studio audience seemed frozen, unsure whether to applaud or remain silent. Sarah glanced at the producers offstage, as if hoping for a signal. Alyssa finally spoke up, her voice tentative. Maybe this is a moment where we can all just take a breath. It feels like we're getting off track from why Jennifer is here today. Whoopi smirked. Maybe the real problem is Jennifer does not want to answer the hard questions. And that's fine. But let's just be clear about what's happening. Jennifer leaned forward now, her tone sharper. No. The problem is when a platform like this stops being about dialogue and starts being about tearing people down. I came here in good faith. But if this is what the conversation is going to be, maybe I should not have come at all. And with that, the room seemed to go colder still. For a long moment after Jennifer's words, no one spoke. The silence was deafening. It was the kind of pause that made the air feel heavy, as though everyone on stage and in the audience was holding their breath, waiting for someone to make the next move. Then Whoopi gave a small, humorless laugh, shaking her head. Oh, so now you're the victim? Whoopi said, her voice edged with sarcasm. You come out here, you're the big star, and the moment someone doesn't play along with your script, suddenly it's, poor me. Jennifer's eyes flashed, but she kept her voice measured. This isn't about playing along, Whoopi. This was supposed to be a conversation. Instead, it feels like you came at me with your mind made up. That's not a discussion. That's an ambush, and I'm not going to sit here and just take it. Joy shifted in her seat, clearly uncomfortable, but unwilling to step between the two. Sarah glanced nervously toward the cameras, trying to gauge how this would look when it went out live. Sunny, always the voice of reason, leaned forward. Look, Sunny said gently. I think we can all agree that things have gotten a little heated. Jennifer, we appreciate you being here. Whoopi, maybe we can redirect. Whoopi cut in, her tone sharper now. No, Sunny, because this is what happens every time. Somebody comes here, they want to talk about the shiny stuff, their movie, their charity, whatever, and the minute someone says, hey, what about the real life behind all that? They get offended. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of sitting here pretending like we have to accept the polished version because it's more comfortable. Jennifer leaned in, her voice low but clear, each word deliberate. And I'm tired of people using real as an excuse to be rude. You want to talk about real? Real is showing up. Real is doing the work. Real is surviving in an industry that tries to tear you down at every turn. I don't need to prove my realness to you or to anyone. The tension between them was electric. Now, and the audience could feel it. Some began murmuring. Others just stared, eyes wide, unable to believe what they were witnessing. Alyssa tried to ease the situation, speaking softly. Maybe, Jennifer, you could tell us about how the new project connects with what you've been through personally. I think that would really resonate with people. But Jennifer's focus remained locked on Whoopi. You want me to bare my soul here, Whoopi? Fine. I've made mistakes. I've been heartbroken. I've trusted the wrong people. I've been judged and misjudged more times than I can count. But I never came here to pretend I was perfect. I came here because I thought I was walking into a space where we could lift each other up, not tear each other down. Whoopi's expression hardened. Then maybe you should stop worrying so much about what looks good and start worrying about what's honest. Jennifer sat back, crossing her arms, her frustration now impossible to hide. Honest. What do you want me to say, Whoopi? That I've been through hell and back? That I've cried myself to sleep more nights than I can remember? That I've questioned everything about myself at times? Is that honest enough for you? Because if it is, then here it is. I don't hide from my truth. But I also don't owe it to anyone on demand. Joy spoke up, her voice firm, trying to regain control of the table. All right, I think we need to cool down. This isn't what the show is about. We can have real conversations without turning them into a fight. Jennifer, we're glad you're here. Let's not let this go off the rails. But it was too late. The atmosphere was thick with tension. Whoopi leaned forward again, unwilling to let it rest. No, Joy, because we let it slide every time. And people out there, the folks watching, They deserve better. They deserve more than celebrities coming on here giving polished sound bites and walking away without ever being challenged. That's what I'm saying. Jennifer stood up then, slow and deliberate, and the studio audience gasped. She placed both hands on the table, leaning slightly forward, her gaze locked on Whoopi's. I came here to have a real conversation. But what I see is someone who's more interested in trying to make me look small so she can feel big. I don't play those games, Whoopi. I've been through too much to let anyone, not even you, treat me like that. For a split second, the room froze. And then Whoopi stood up too, matching Jennifer's stance, her voice rising. You don't get to come on this show and dictate how it goes. If you can't handle tough questions, maybe you shouldn't be here at all. Sarah raised both hands, her voice tense but trying to mediate. Please, let's just take a breath, okay? We can reset. We don't have to do this. But neither Jennifer nor Whoopi was backing down. Jennifer shook her head, stepping back from the table but keeping her eyes on Whoopi. I've been on hundreds of stages, had thousands of interviews, and I've dealt with my share of hard questions. But what's happening here? This isn't journalism. This isn't integrity. This is bullying, plain and simple. And I'm done with it. The producers were now visible off stage, motioning frantically, trying to figure out whether to cut to commercial or intervene. The other panelists sat frozen, caught between wanting to de-escalate and not knowing how to. Whoopi took a breath, but her tone remained biting. Then maybe you should go. If you're not willing to have the kind of conversation we have here, maybe this isn't the table for you. Jennifer hesitated for just a beat, as though considering whether to give another reply. Then, without another word, she turned and walked off stage, her posture straight, her head high. As the audience watched in stunned silence, the camera swung back to the table. Whoopi sat down slowly, her face set in stone, while the rest of the panel struggled to find their footing after what had just happened. The silence in the studio stretched long after Jennifer disappeared behind the curtain. The cameras stayed on the panel, capturing every uncomfortable shift, every averted glance. The audience was still, waiting for someone, anyone, to break the tension. Joy exhaled first, loud enough that her breath seemed to echo in the quiet. She turned to Whoopi, her expression tight, the easy humor drained from her face. Well, that went great, she said dryly, folding her hands on the table. What exactly was the goal there, Whoopi? To make a guest storm off live on air? Whoopi did not look at her. She kept her gaze steady on the spot where Jennifer had stood, as if expecting her to reappear. The goal, Whoopi said slowly, was to stop pretending. We sit here, show after show, smiling, nodding, letting people promote whatever they want while dodging the real stuff. I'm done playing along. Sunny leaned forward, her voice low but firm, her frustration barely hidden now. No one is asking you to play along. But there's a difference between asking hard questions and trying to humiliate someone. Jennifer came here in good faith. She didn't deserve that. Whoopi finally turned, meeting Sunny's gaze. She came here in good faith? Please. She came here to sell a story, and the second she couldn't control the narrative, she walked out. That's not good faith. That's vanity. Alyssa spoke then, hesitant but clear. Whoopi, I get that you want to challenge people. I respect that. But there's a way to do it without making it personal. That didn't feel like journalism. That felt like a takedown. Whoopi smirked, leaning back in her chair. Oh, so now I'm the villain because I didn't let her skate by? I'm the bad guy because I asked the questions no one else would. Joy shook her head, exasperated. No one's saying you can't ask tough questions. But you didn't just ask. You went after her. From the second she sat down, it was like you had a point to prove, and you weren't going to stop until you got under her skin. Congratulations, you did it. The audience murmured, sensing the rift on stage was not just about Jennifer anymore. Sarah, still glancing anxiously at the producers, tried to steer things back on course. Maybe we should just take a moment. Cool down. We're live. Let's remember that. Whoopi waved her off. No, let's be honest. We're always so worried about being polite, about making sure no one feels uncomfortable. But what about the viewers? What about giving them a real conversation, not just fluff and PR spin? Sunny's voice rose slightly, emotion creeping in despite her usual calm. There's a difference between real conversation and what just happened. You didn't want dialogue, Whoopi. You wanted to corner her. And when she pushed back, you doubled down. That's not strength. That's ego. Whoopi's eyes narrowed. Careful, Sonny. You're starting to sound like you think you know better than I do how to do this job. Sonny didn't flinch. Maybe today I do. Because whatever you were trying to accomplish, all you did was drive away a guest who came here to share something meaningful. And you made the rest of us look complicit. The tension between them crackled. Even the audience, caught between loyalty to the familiar faces of the panel and sympathy for the guest who had been driven off stage, seemed unsure how to respond. Some clapped, a few booed, but most simply watched, transfixed. Joy sighed heavily, rubbing her temples. This isn't what the View is supposed to be. We're supposed to have opinions, yes, but we're also supposed to have respect. For each other, for our guests. That's what makes this table work. Whoopi crossed her arms, her voice cold. Maybe what makes this table work is telling the truth, whether people want to hear it or not. Alyssa tried again, her tone pleading. Whoopi, no one's saying don't tell the truth. But ask yourself, was that about the truth, or was it about making a point at Jennifer's expense? Whoopi didn't answer right away. She looked at each of her co-hosts, then out at the audience, then finally back at the empty chair where Jennifer had Saturday. She didn't have to leave, she said at last, quieter now, but no less resolute. She could have stayed. She could have answered. But she chose to walk. That says more than anything I asked her. Joy shook her head. No, Whoopi. What it says is that we crossed a line. And now, instead of having a meaningful conversation, we've turned this into a spectacle. The guest is gone. The audience is uncomfortable. And for what? So you could feel like you got the last word. Whoopi's jaw tightened, but before she could reply, Sunny spoke again, her voice softer now. You know, sometimes being real means listening. Really listening. Not just pushing an agenda. Maybe we should all think about that. The table fell quiet again, the weight of what had just happened hanging over them. Off stage, the producers gestured frantically, urging them to wrap up or go to break, but none of the panelists seemed eager to move on just yet. Finally, Sarah broke the silence, her voice tentative but steady. Let's take a quick break, she said, looking directly into the camera. We'll be right back. The screen faded, but the tension lingered, the fallout from the clash far from over. When the show returned from break, the energy in the studio had shifted. Gone was the usual chatter, the laughter, the easy rhythm that had come to define the View. Instead, there was a heavy stillness, as if everyone, the hosts, the audience, even the crew, was still trying to process what had just unfolded. Joy was the first to speak. Her tone was measured, but her eyes betrayed her frustration. Well, we're back. And I think it's fair to say, that was not the kind of conversation any of us planned to have today. Whoopi sat stone-faced, arms crossed, her gaze fixed. On the table, she said nothing. Sunny glanced at Joy, then at Whoopi, then at the camera. This is a show where we pride ourselves on tackling tough topics. But it's also a place where we strive for respect. I think it's important we acknowledge that today, things went off course. And I hope our viewers understand that's not what we aim for at this table. Whoopi let out a short breath, almost a scoff, but still she didn't speak. The silence was as loud as anything she might have said. Alyssa leaned in, her voice quiet but clear. I think a lot of people watching felt uncomfortable. And maybe that's a good thing. Maybe we all need to sit with that for a minute. But I also think we need to reflect on how we challenge our guests and whether we're doing it in a way that invites conversation rather than shuts it down. Whoopi finally spoke then, her voice low but edged with defiance. So now we're just going to pretend I was the only one saying what needed to be said? You all sat there. You could have jumped in, but you didn't. And now it's easy to point fingers at me. Joy shook her head, leaning forward, her frustration spilling over. No one's pretending anything, Whoopi. But what happened out here today wasn't about hard questions. It was about the way you asked them. The tone. The intent. You wanted that clash. And you got it. Congratulations. Whoopi's eyes flashed. You think I wanted this? You think I enjoy sitting here being the one willing to say what the rest of you are too polite to bring up? Someone has to do it. Someone has to stop playing nice all the time. Sunny interjected, her voice firm, her patience thinning. There's a difference between not playing nice and not playing fair. Today, we weren't fair. And we owe it to our viewers, and frankly to ourselves, to be better than that. The audience, sensing the rawness of the moment, remained quiet. There was no applause, no laughter, no murmur of agreement. Just silence. Sarah, always the peacemaker, tried once more to soften the moment. Maybe what today shows us is that we have to keep learning. We all come here with strong views. That's what makes the show what it is. But maybe we need to remember that listening is just as important as speaking. Whoopi turned to Sarah, her tone weary now rather than combative. I hear you. I do. But I'm not going to sit here and apologize for trying to get past the surface. If that makes me the bad guy, so be it. Joy leaned back, folding her arms, clearly done with the back and forth. It's not about being the bad guy, Whoopi. It's about knowing when to stop pushing, when to let the conversation breathe. Today, you didn't. And that's on you. Whoopi didn't reply. She stared down at the table, her expression unreadable. Alyssa spoke again, glancing toward the camera. And maybe it's on all of us to make sure that next time, when we see a conversation going off the rails, we step in sooner. We owe that to our guests and to each other. There was a long pause. The tension at the table was still palpable, but the heat of the confrontation had cooled, replaced by something heavier, regret, perhaps, or the weight of things left unsaid. Finally, Joy turned back to the camera, her tone softer now. We want to thank our viewers for sticking with us through a very difficult conversation today. We know it wasn't easy to watch, and we hope you'll share your thoughts. Because at the end of the day, that's what this show is about. Having real conversations, even when they're messy. Sarah nodded, managing a small, tight smile. Please, let us know what you think. Did today's discussion cross a line? Or was it an example of what happens when people speak their truths, no matter how uncomfortable it gets? Sunny added quietly, we want to hear from you. Leave your thoughts in the comments. And as always, if you value real conversations, don't forget to subscribe. We'll see you next time. The camera lingered for a moment longer on the panel, for women sitting together, but divided, each lost in her own thoughts as the screen faded to black.